Hi, my name is Pintip Dunn. I'm the author of Seize Today, and you're watching Lit with Love.
Hi, I'm Sonali, and welcome to Lit with Love, where we bring you interviews with romance authors on authorsvoice.net, where we connect authors to the world. So welcome, and today we have with us New York Times bestselling author, I love saying that, Pintip Dunn. Welcome, Pintip.
Thank you, Sonali. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. And Pintip writes sci-fi young adult romances,
Yes.
which is kind of all three of my favorite things in one place, almost. So, I'm sorry. And the reason that I stressed the New York Times bestselling author was because Pintip hit the New York Times bestseller list with her debut novel, which is every author's dream, Pintip, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to be talking today about her third book in this, I think, brilliant New York Times bestselling trilogy. And this is Seize Today, which is does the series have a name?
Just the Forget Tomorrow series.
The Forget Tomorrow
which
series.
is also the name of the first book.
Right, so it's Forget Tomorrow, Remember Yesterday, and Seize Today.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to start with this question, but I have to say, such title envy. And we will come back and talk to you about where those titles came from and who gets credit for them. Because I have a really seriously hard time naming my books. But first, I could go on about the book, but I'll let you introduce the series and the book to our readers.
Sure. So the Forget Tomorrow series is about a world where you can send memories back to your younger self. So everyone on their 17th birthday receives a memory from their future selves. And this memory is designed to guide them for their future. So for example, if they have dreams of being a professional basketball player, but the future shows that, you know what, that's not going to happen. You're going to be an accountant, which is perfectly wonderful as well. That way you can direct your energies into the right place and you're not wasting your time or energy doing something that you weren't meant to be. And so all of the teenagers in this world look forward to this memory as something that will help guide them in their future, and just to answer all of their questions about life. It's also meant to be really reassuring. And so my heroine in the first book, Callie, has been looking forward to this memory all of her life. But when she actually does receive it, she sees the unthinkable, which is that she sees her future self killing her beloved younger sister. So that's the first book in the series. And what's interesting about my trilogy is that each book follows a different heroine, and they can all actually be read as standalone, although there's an overarching story that connects the three books. But I did that on purpose. I wanted my readers to be able to pick up a book and follow a new set of characters, a new heroine, a new journey, a new adventure, but at the same time have the books be intricately related.
Yes, and I will admit, I absolutely loved Forget Tomorrow, and I couldn't wait to read Forget Yesterday, but I didn't get to it, and I picked up Seize Today, and you're absolutely right. I have to go back and read Jesse and Tanner's story, but you're right, they do stand alone.
Oh, good. I'm really happy to hear that, because that was definitely my goal.
Yes, and so many goals, really well accomplished. So you did hit on some interesting themes that I want to come back to, but the most amazing thing to me about all sci-fi is always the world building, and this is there's some really brilliant stuff there with. I think one of the hardest things to pull off is time travel in novels, and not only do you pull off time travel, you kind of break it down into the science almost of time travel and time streams, which is, I think, very brilliantly done. And I want you to talk about the world building and where that came from, and in terms of process.
Okay.
So it's a two-part, 10-part question. Let me just make this easy for you. But Pintip went to Harvard, so I think you can pull it off. So I had to throw that in there, right?
Thank you, Sonali.
But let's talk a little bit about, in terms of process, did these books come from character or from world? Like, what is your process?
Yeah, sure.
For, getting
My science fiction stories almost always come from a what if question. Like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened, and how would that look in a story? For this series in particular, it's interesting. You mentioned that Forget Tomorrow was my debut novel, and I had been writing for quite a long while, and I was very frustrated with the process, with the rejections. As I'm sure you know, all authors go through lots and lots of rejections. And so at this point, I was talking about my frustrations with an editor friend of mine, and she said, you know what, Pintip, I wish I had a crystal ball, because then I could tell you that 5 years from now, you would be published, and you wouldn't spend so much time and energy like worrying about, is this the right thing for you? And that was very much me. I was, during those long years when I wasn't sure if I would ever get published, I would think, like I could be spending my time and energy doing something else. Is this a waste of my time? Maybe I don't have the talent. And so what happened was I was thinking about her words the next day. And I thought, I would love if my future self could send me a memory showing that I was a published author, and then I would know that this would be worth it. And then my next thought, of course, was like, wow, that would be a pretty cool idea for a book. And there you go. That's how the Forget Tomorrow series was born. And from that point on, I never looked back. To go towards your question about world building, and this is a hard one because I get this a lot. And I think that the big thing for me is that a world isn't built in one day, or 1 week, or 1 month. It's an ongoing process. And so to try and think that you can, come up with all of the intricacies of the world in a short time, that makes it really daunting and overwhelming. And since for me, this series was, 3-4 year process to write, to come up with to build each little detail. And so for me, I have this basic idea of what the world is, but then I fill in the details like little by little and bit by bit.
As you go along.
Yes, absolutely.
As in all, even with basic plots with no sci-fi or fantasy world building, so much comes to us as we write.
Right.
So definitely, I can see that. But then tracking it has got to be interesting, right?
Well,
across 3 books.
it is interesting. A lot of people have a series Bible. I don't actually do that. But at the same time, no, I don't. I don't at all. I did, like I said, the books are extremely intertwined. So I don't actually read any of my books after they're published.
Wow.
Do you?
Yes.
Do you?
Wow.
I do. I can't.
Not end to end.
Yes.
But I will kind of, do you have that pull toward like, I'll be doing something else, and then the scene I wrote will kind of pull to me because of something that's going on in my life, and I'll go and I'll read that.
No. Like, the only exception I make is when I'm writing the feature books. Then I go back and I'll go, I know exactly, which character appears where. And so I'll go back and I'll say, okay, this was his hair color, or this was his eye color. Or I'll go back and I'll say, how did I describe this particular concept to make sure that my descriptions are consistent? But I do not, if I can help it, I do not reread my books once they're published.
For such an intertwined series, like, so when you're writing book 2, you didn't have to go back and of go over book 1?
I went back a lot, but never did I read it from end to end.
Wow.
But there are certain scenes though. Like, there's a scene at the end of book 1, like you were saying, sometimes in your life you get pulled and you go back and reread it. There's a scene that you probably will know what I'm talking about. I have never ever read that scene without crying. And when I was writing it, I cried. And
Are you talking about C's
in book 1.
In book 1, okay. Because there are some here that
there are some here as well.
Yeah.
But as authors, before it goes to print, we end up reading a scene 50 times, 100 times. Yeah. And so I think that was when I got my first hardcover for the first time, held the book for the first time, I did reread that scene, and that has been the only exception. I just don't reread my
That you go
writing.
back and, yeah.
I mean, I
yeah.
can't. All I see are the flaws.
Do you actually? Yeah. Wow.
So, and I think, oh wow, I would have worded it this way, or I would have, fixed it like this. And so,
So are you a big reviser, like in terms of process? What is it?
my process is, it's funny. It changes a little bit with every book, as I'm sure you know. But my basic process is that the first thing I do is I write a very fast, very dirty first. I call it a zero draft. I don't even call it a first draft because it doesn't merit that name. I just write the story as quickly as possible. Then I step back and I do a lot of plotting. I use my storyboard, and I fill in, figure out what the plot is. Then I throw the entire initial draft away and I start over.
Wow.
And so I basically write most books twice. And then the second time when I rewrite it, I write it very slowly. The first time is very quick, the second time is very slow, and that's when I'm actually paying attention to details, to the prose, to the way things are worded.
But
And
you
then,
have the flow now because you've done the
Yes.
dirty draft. Okay.
And so then when I finish that, I revise it, and only after that does anybody ever lays eyes on it. No critique partners, no editors, no agents, and that's why my first drafts are very, they're pretty polished. Because of
Yeah,
that.
and I think mine's similar, though this book was completely different. Because just when I was like, now I have a process, now I don't.
Right. Well, exactly.
But interesting tidbit is, when you were talking about being unpublished, the first time we met, I don't know if you remember, was RWA. We
I
were
do remember it,
both
exactly.
in this restaurant in New York
Was it a
City.
restaurant? I thought we were in line at one of the book signings.
But, yes, but
Oh,
before
yes,
that, when
we were
I
at the
think it was
restaurant.
like Kim and we were all
yes,
in
I
this
remember
restaurant,
that.
and I remember both of us having this like joint sigh about
Yes.
the querying process and about getting published, and we actually I remember feeling this shared load because we were both at that
Yes.
time trying to sell
Yes.
our books and
Actually, I can see that scene very
yes,
clearly in my mind. So yeah, it's
yeah.
fun that I
Yeah.
knew you before
and
you
it
were
was
published. And
and we were both had that, and when you kind of say someday, there's this, and which is thematically I think in the books is that you have you want this to happen, it's going to happen, but there's also this almost like disbelief that it's actually going to happen, that all of those things sit together.
Right. I mean,
right?
because we look at back then, certainly looking at all of the amazing authors and their successes, you think that can never be me.
That could never be
that's
me.
not something that would ever happen to me.
Yeah, and then you write your first book and you hit the New York Times with it, and
Which
so
was unbelievable.
so great,
So
very
unbelievable.
believable, but so great. But we have that moment, and one of the things. Before I go on, I do want to kind of pull back, and I usually say this at the start of the show. Please send in questions, and thank you for those of you who have. There's a button under the screen that will let you buy the book, and Pintip will sign the book for you and send in questions. So now that I have broken my own, thought process and link, let me come back to this. So one of the things that was interesting to me in this book was the heroine. Olivia is almost, we have so much pressure, especially if you're writing, actually, no matter what genre you're writing right now, if you're writing a female protagonist, the pressure for her to be kick-ass is really high. So you're expected to write these vulnerable, characters who show growth, who are strong on page one, right? Which is kind of this dance we dance.
Right.
But Olivia literally has zero self-esteem.
Right.
Like she
Right.
has huge self-esteem issues. So you want to talk a little bit about doing a heroine like that?
Yeah, I mean, the heroines for books 1 and 2, Callie and Jessa, are very kick-ass, like you say. And so I did want to, it's always fun to explore different kind of characters. But when you think about what Olivia has been through, just her circumstances, it does make sense that she has zero self-esteem. So she is the only true precognitive of her time, which means that she can see into the future. But more than that, she doesn't see just one future, she sees all of them. Every single pathway that a person's future might take, all flickering before her eyes. And so, as a young girl, she's been crushed with this weight of all of these memories on her shoulders because she can see what might happen in every iteration of our world. And to have the mother that she does, which is the evil chairwoman Dresden, she's kind of the big villain in the entire series, it's been really tough for her. And so in order to escape from this pressure, she isolated herself in the woods for 10 years. And so when we start this book, she's only been out of isolation for about 6 months. And so she's kind of acclimating herself back to society and back to, being in a world. And so she's so used to being the observer. Her nickname is Shadow at the beginning of the book because she's, the way others see her, the way she sees herself is that she's not, and she doesn't act. Her only role in life is to observe. And that's what she's believed all of her life. And so throughout the course of the book, she learns that she is not only an actor, but she will actually can play a pivotal role in saving their entire world. And it was wonderful to see her have that growth and to go with her through that journey where she can see, you know what, I actually have value beyond observing other people.
Right, and I think that's the fuel that you have some scenes in there that are really powerful, and all of those have to do with both her and him kind of coming into these moments of transitioning from thinking nothing of themselves to thinking something of themselves, and that takes strength for children like them who don't have parental love.
Right.
It's a very flawed journey of parental love for them. So, in terms of theme, also, I did want to talk about how brilliant I thought that, every time we read precognitives in sci-fi, there's this general "this is going to happen" sort of thing, and because choice is so important in fiction and in life, the thing that she's able to see every option and bring it down to a percentage. So there's almost like data science in there, which was very interesting to me. But thematically, where are your heroines coming from? Is there, we all kind of are trying to search for something in our fiction, and what were you trying to explore with these girls?
One of the reasons why I love young adult fiction is that to me, these stories are about the journey of a character learning who they are as a person. And oftentimes what they find out is that the person who they are is stronger and braver and much more competent than they ever dreamed possible. So I love that. I find it very inspiring for myself in order to reach for my dreams. But for each of my heroines, this is the journey that they go through. Like in the beginning, they don't know that they're actually capable of these really great things. And for me, it's interesting that you mention kick-ass heroines, because my heroines are very strong, but instead of their strength coming behind them being like extremely athletic or powerful, their strength comes from how deeply they love. And so each of my heroines, like that's what they draw from. Like it's the love that they have for their family that gives them the strength to act. And so to me, in my own personal life, that's what I found. And so that's what I was really trying to explore with these girls.
That's a great segue, because I was, going to ask you about how much part family and heritage plays in in the books, because there's also the whole mediocrity. What is mediocrity? And and you do question that, because we put so much emphasis on on success and on and I know that in certain communities more than others, that's a huge thing. So I was almost, because a lot of my own books have explore that whole overachieving stereotype. This is of course much subtler, and I wanted to ask about life experiences and how where does that come from for you specifically, because you're bringing heritage to your books, and you have, and talk to us about that too, about the heritage of your characters.
My heroines, Callie and Jessa, are half Asian. This is a science fiction series, so unlike one of my other books, Girl on the Verge, which is about a Thai American girl, where I kind of directly address this question of heritage and culture. In this book, it's much more subtle, but the decision to make those heroines half Asian was very deliberate. When I was growing up, I never saw any characters who looked like me in books. And, that was really hard because I was such a bookworm growing up. I read anytime I was able to get, at the dinner table, like constantly. And I think that it's really damaging to never see yourselves reflected in the characters in a book. And when I had the opportunity to publish, I didn't want my children to have that same experience. And so for me, the biggest gift that I could give to my children is to give them heroines who looked like them. And my children are half Asian. So that's why I made that decision. When you talk about family, it's absolutely agree. I think that especially now, there's so much emphasis placed on what I call the superlative in these books. And it's like to be the best at everything, like whatever talent that there is. And maybe it's the best musician, the best basketball player, the best scientist. But it's always this emphasis on like, what can you do? And so what I was really trying to explore and show is that what's most important of all are not these abilities, but how deeply you can love. And so for my characters, each of the heroines actually, none of the three of them really have the superlative quality. I mean, Olivia is this precognitive, she has this ability, but it's in terms of like, are they the smartest? Are they the most athletic? Like none of those things, but they all love really deeply.
That's great. And even her ability is inherited, and there's a reason why why she is the way she is. So you mentioned Girl. Sorry, excuse me. You mentioned Girl on the Verge, and I want to come back and talk about that. Those books also. But we'll take a question.
Sure.
And this is, I don't know whom this is from. So if you send in questions, please put your name on it so we can thank you. So whoever this question is from, thank you. Have you ever considered writing in a different genre?
Well, yes, absolutely. So the funny thing is I actually, before I found young adult, I had written 3 books in 3 other different genres. They were chick lit, contemporary romance, adult, and kind of a literary family saga. And I was hopping from genre to genre, trying to find my voice, trying to find where I fit in. And then I read The Hunger Games. And that book literally changed my life. As soon as I finished, I said, yes, this is what I want to be writing. This is the home for me, and I never looked back. And I think that that's why I love the young adult genre so much. I spoke before about this journey that the characters have of becoming their best selves. Within young adult, I write both contemporary and science fiction. My other 2 books are contemporary thrillers. But what all the books have in common, I think, is that they're all pretty suspenseful and thrilling and exciting. And so they have that. But then, like the characters, the themes that I explore, just because it's a different genre doesn't mean that I stop exploring those things. As for the future, of course, I would be so open to writing other genres. Like I would love to write an adult book, for example.
That family saga sounds really good. That's kind of my favorite.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push an agenda.
Oh, okay.
and chick lit, of course.
Yes,
and
so much fun.
Kind of combine those 2.
Yeah,
just for me.
Okay, absolutely. But like as an author, like the way we grow is to try and explore different things, and so I would never close myself off to, a certain tense, first person, third person, past, present, adult, young adult. There are probably certain things that I couldn't do. Like I'm not sure I could write a historical, but everything else I think is fair game. Like I'm excited to explore it all.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to ask you for what's coming next and have you talk about Girl on the Verge too.
Yeah,
but I'm
absolutely.
going to tell a little, story. Again, I don't know if you remember, we did a plotting class together.
Yes, I
And
remember that
it was,
as well.
That was Girl on the Verge. So we
Was that-
kind of,
oh, that
I think that's what it was. I think
Oh, how
we
exciting.
were,
Yeah.
we were both, again, newbies. And
You know what? That was The Darkest Lie.
That was The Darkest
That
Lie,
was The
the first
Darkest Lie,
one. Yes,
yes.
that was The Darkest Lie, yes. And I remember, because we were doing these little exercises in the workshop where we talked about our story, and that concept was just, it just went in there and stayed, and when that book was coming out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is that book, I know
Aw.
that book. So
That's so fun.
you want to talk about those two books a little bit?
Sure, The Darkest Lie?
Yeah.
So The Darkest Lie is about a girl whose mom committed suicide 6 months ago. And after she was accused of having an affair with the high school student, the captain of the football team, and the mom was a teacher. And so it was a big scandal in their small town. And my heroine has been trying to lie low ever since, because she's been the victim of a lot of bullying and sexual harassment. And then she starts working at the crisis hotline, which is where her mom worked. And with the help of the new boy, she discovers that her mom's death was not as straightforward as it appears, and that in fact it might not be a suicide. So it's a mystery thriller. It was a lot of fun to write. Funny story, I don't know if you know this, but the morning that class started, I had been writing another science fiction, and then my agent and I thought, you know what, maybe try contemporary. So I actually came up with the idea the morning that class started. And so the complete development of the plot was absolutely through that class. So you were with me right from the beginning.
Yeah,
right
and
from
I
the
remember
beginning.
that, and I was like, darn it, what a concept that is. Like, why didn't I
Yeah.
think of that? You have that, why didn't I think of that moment? And then the other standalone book, which is Girl on the Verge.
Yeah, that's called Girl on the Verge. I mentioned before, it's about a Thai-American girl, and she's caught between cultural worlds, the American world that she lives in and the Thai world that is her culture. And she feels like she doesn't belong into either world. She's not quite American enough, she's not quite Thai enough. And so she's really struggling to find what her identity is or who she is as a person. And so the story is about what happens to her when a stalker comes in and tries to steal that identity.
Wow. And that came out?
That just came out last June.
Okay.
This June, so a few months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that sounds fabulous. And identity stories are always really interesting.
Yes.
And we do need those too.
And
for
that
the
book,
reasons that,
that book means so much to me. Like, I never thought that I could write a book with a Thai-American heroine like myself. And so that book's very close to my heart.
That's fabulous. And Girl on the Verge.
Yes.
Okay, let's take one more question and then we can talk about what comes next.
Sure.
Do you think of your novels as being part of a genre like romance or sci-fi, or are they just your ideas? And this is from Anita. Anita, hi Anita. Thank you.
I don't go into a book thinking I want to write a science fiction or I want to write a romance. So I think it's probably more accurate to say that they're just my ideas and that it happens to belong in these worlds. But I do have to say that I do have a tendency, like I really enjoy those science fiction ideas. And I really enjoy the romance. And so a lot of my ideas will kind of naturally fall into those genres, even though I don't set out to write in those genres.
Yeah, and structurally they're very much romance and sci-fi, so you do merge the structures really
I try.
well. Because, and we have to talk about the romance in this book.
Yeah.
because they're adorable. And the chemistry kind of starts on page 1 because for the normal reasons that he's really hot. But he's also a really sweet guy.
He is.
So tell us a little bit more about Ryder.
So Ryder is the hero in this book. We've seen him in both of the previous books. He was a little boy, and he grew up into a wonderful young man. But Ryder has a lot of trust issues. Like, he didn't have a very good childhood either. And so, in some ways, he and Olivia are perfect for one another. They both want more than anything to be first in somebody's life. They've never had that before. And so when they discover each other, they realize maybe they could be that person for one another.
Yeah, and that's just a beautiful journey. And I was saying there's actually points where I teared up when they have those
Oh,
moments,
thank
which
you.
was just lovely. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I keep knocking my mic. Let's do 2 quick questions back to back, and then we'll talk about what you're reading right now and want to recommend. How long did it take you to complete your first book?
Probably about a year.
Thanks,
About a year. Each book, I've gotten a little faster with each one. Part of that has to do with deadlines. But, and I'm getting more comfortable with the process. But I think the first book was about a year. Since then, I probably take about 4 to 6 months to write a book.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm jealous. And that's from conception to
Well, conception,
ending.
sometimes the conception comes a little bit earlier, but you can't work on the book right away. Yeah.
All right. And that question was from Belle, and this one's from Belle as well. Thank you, Belle. What was your reaction to becoming a New York Times bestselling author?
I mean, honestly, nobody expected it to happen. I was in Thailand, and I woke up, and Thailand is 12 hours off of my normal Eastern time. So I woke up in the morning, and my inbox had exploded. My text messages had exploded from friends and my agent and my editor, and everyone's like, "Congratulations!" And I'm like, "What's going on? I don't understand." And so it was just complete shock. I mean, none of us expected it, and it was just such a nice surprise. Yeah.
Yes. Wow, and you should have expected it. They're really great books. But how soon after release? Because I'm trying to think. It was
I hit the list in August. The book came out in November, so
wow,
approximately 9 months after
That's
release.
now I know what you're saying. So 9 months after it came out. That is amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations. So please go ahead and order some of Pintip's books that she's going to sign for us here. But tell us what you're reading right now and loving.
What am I reading right now? Oh my gosh. The truth is, Sonali, I've been actively drafting my next book, and when I draft, I don't read.
Okay.
So what happens is that when I finish a book, I'll go on these book binges where I read 10 books in a week. But when I'm actively drafting, I don't like reading other people's words. It interferes too much with my process.
Yeah, I'm like that too, and I'm in the middle of a book binge, so you're getting
Good.
What will be the first book on your binge? I'm totally going to put you on the spot
Oh my
here.
gosh. I've read so many romance novels this year. Usually I read more young adult than romance, but this year my goal was to read 100 novels. And I think I'm getting pretty close to that goal. And it's because I've been reading a lot of romances. Let's see, who are some of the people? Al Kennedy, Serena Bowen, Kristen Callahan, Cindy Madsen. Like, I've been just binging on their books. And so I guess when I come up for air, maybe I'll just look up some of my favorites and see if they have anything new out. So,
yeah, lots of great new books out. And I think we have a minute, so you want to take us out with what's coming next?
Sure. I have 2 books coming out next year. One is called Fit to Die, and that is about a world where nutrition can be transferred via a pill, and society is split up into eaters and non-eaters. And my heroine, the princess, has been tasked with finding a boy fit to die in order to save her father, the king. But it turns out that the best candidate is the boy that she loves. So she needs to decide whether to save her father or the boy that she loves.
We don't do easy choices in our books, do we?
No, we don't. But I love this book. I think it's one of my favorite books that I've written.
Wow. And when does it come out?
That comes out next June.
Next June.
And then I have a book coming out in October called Malice. And that is about a girl who finds out that one of her classmates will one day launch World War III. And so she must decide whether she can kill his innocent self now, while in high school, while he's still innocent, in order to save millions of lives in the future.
Wow.
Again,
I was going to say I have title envy, but I have concept envy too. I have such concept envy.
Thank you.
That does sound fun. I cut you off.
No, I mean, I just love, these are the moral choices that I love, because I feel like when you make a character make a really difficult moral decision, you really get to the core of who they are. And that's why I choose the concepts that I do.
So the concepts come first.
Concepts come
Okay.
first.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. But I do want to go back to that thing we started with. Who comes up with your titles?
I do.
Really? All of
Yeah.
them? We need to
yes.
talk about my books, and you need to help me a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've come up with, I've come up with all of them. Sometimes The Darkest Lie we went back a few times, did some brainstorming. I think we had 3 titles before we finished, settled on that one. But most of the other books, the title I come with, it just stays. So.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being
course.
here. Do
Thank
you
you
have
for
any
having me.
last words for your readers?
No, I mean, I'm just so excited to be here. It was so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you to my readers. It's been a wonderful 2 years since I've been published, and I couldn't ask for anything more. Like, it's my dream come true to publish these books. So,
Congratulations. Keep
thank
going.
you. Thank you.
For me. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in every month. Again, this is Lit with Love, and I'm Sonali Dev, and our next Lit with Love is with Molly Cox-Bryan, who does Cozy Mysteries, and she will be here November 8th. And if you went to authorsvoice.net, you can get a list of all of the upcoming shows and all the times. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Pintip, and we'll see you again next month.